So here we are. Come on in. Let's talk. Let's do a thing. My name is Shannon Coates, Dr. Shannon Coates. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them, as my friend Liz Jackson Hearn says. Wait, Liz, what do you say? You say either is cool, both are groovy? I think something along those lines, or rad. I don't know. I can't remember now. Anyway, and I am coming to you live from a little town north of Toronto in Ontario. I'm grateful to live and work on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga, and the Wendake Neowentio peoples. Yes. And I am a singer, an educator, and a maximizer, a voice pedagogy maximizer. That's a thing? Sure. That's the thing. I've worked primarily with independent voice teachers, lots of academic teachers too, but I work primarily with independent voice teachers to develop pedagogy, to develop teaching skills, better teaching skills, more impactful teaching skills, to be the teachers that we want to be. I come live onto Facebook and Instagram pretty regularly, and I do live office hours like these ones. And if you would like to check out my live office hours, missed a replay or 1,000, I've done a lot of them now, you can check those out at my YouTube channel, which just like Google YouTube Dr. Shannon Coates. I think it's there. VoicePed, I don't know. It's there. I think it's pretty accessible. I hope it's pretty easy to find. The primary thing that I do right now, or one of the main things that I'm doing right now, is VoicePed Undegree, which is for voice teachers. It is a 9 month, almost 10 program where we dig pretty deep into pedagogy. What kind of teaching do you want to do? It's pretty transformative, if I do say so myself. So, here's the thing. Talking today about how to listen. And I called this How to Listen 101 because I do everything 101. Present information often I feel is foundational, and often we skip some of the foundational things to our detriment, I think, often. We skip over some of the foundational principles around all of our pedagogy principles, but some of the foundational things. And I think this is also true for our ideas around how we're supposed to listen to singers in the voice studio. And so often what happens, and keep this in mind, I work with undergraduate voice singers, yes, I work with undergraduate singers who are, in most cases, teaching for the first time in their life. In most cases, brand new to teaching, have never taught before. And so in the class, I am working very hard to give those students the foundational principles around pedagogy and how to teach that will allow them to expand their skill, but also start pretty skillfully. And in most cases, those folks in particular are hearing about the thyroarytenoid and the cricothyroid and formants and acoustic registration and et cetera, et cetera. In most cases, those students, those singers, are hearing about these physiological concepts for the first time, or are encountering them in detail, or in as much detail as I can bring to the class anyway, for the first time. They might have some understanding here of this concept or understanding of this concept, and especially as it relates to their own singing, of course. They're encountering this sort of more holistic understanding of the anatomy and physiology of the voice for the first time in many cases. And I also work with lots and lots of independent voice teachers who in some cases have really foundational understanding of the anatomy and physiology of the voice and have done courses, for example, have done maybe my course, the Vocal Instrument 101, or who have done other courses, or who have done an undergraduate pedagogy course. And all through that spectrum of folks who are brand new to the understanding of anatomy and physiology, to folks who deeply understand, who have a very thorough grasp of anatomy and physiology of the singing voice. Throughout that entire spectrum, a very much reoccurring theme with all of those teachers and all of those stages of their teaching journey and all of those stages of understanding of anatomy and physiology. A reoccurring theme is that in order for me to be a good teacher, I have to be able to diagnose what is wrong with the singer who I am working with, so that I can come up with the right exercises for them to be able to develop their voice or to develop their technique. And this is in my opinion, is a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be a voice teacher and a voice coach, especially when we're talking about working with the typical population of an independent voice studio. So when we're talking about a very broad range of singers who have a broad range of goals and who have a lot of different things that they want to do with their voice or use their voice to do and or communicate. Call this the generalists, which I have been and am no longer, but I have been and started out as, for at least a decade, being a traditional independent voice teacher, a generalist. I teach whoever walks through that door in many cases and adjust to whatever it is that they want to be able to do with their voice. And this understanding, or this should, around I need to be able to know what is happening in the voice, what is functional, what the anatomy and physiology is of the voice, how we make sounds, what muscles, what structures, what shaping, what is going on with the voice in that anatomy and physiology sense, in order to be able to teach well, is insidious in all of our teaching and really sneaks into all of our understanding of pedagogy and what it means to be an effective or good voice teacher. And I want to say a couple of things about that. First of all, why I do not think that that is true, and the impact that that misunderstanding has on our teaching and on our assessment of our own teaching skills, if you will. And then I want to talk about what this looks like in real life, and then a couple of ideas about how to start to reframe or change the way that we listen. So what tends to happen in this sort of metaphorical sense, if you will, in the bigger sense, in the meta sense, let's say in the meta sense, what tends to happen is a singer comes into the studio. I, as the teacher, listen to the singer with the view to understand what is wrong with their singing, what they need to change, what technique they need to change or acquire, or maybe they tell me what they want to change or what they feel is wrong with their singing or their voice or what they don't like about their singing. And then because I am viewing my teaching and my pedagogy through the lens of needing to diagnose so that I can prescribe, so that I can fix them, or so that I can help them to be fixed or to solve the problem of their voice, whatever that problem is in their voice. I think that the more I know about anatomy and physiology, or about what is happening, what is causing the thing to be wrong, the better I'm going to be able to prescribe an exercise to change the thing that is wrong, or change the coordination, or to tell them what to do instead. So for me, first of all, the lens is skewed because I am looking through this diagnose and prescribe pedagogical lens, which means that I am looking for the problem in the voice. I'm looking for the thing that needs to be fixed. I'm looking for the thing that isn't working in the voice. And secondly, I am relying or reliant on my understanding of anatomy and physiology to be able to correct the vocal fault, to quote McKinney. So I'm relying on my understanding of the respiration system, of the phonation system, of the resonance system, of registration, of how we create sounds, to be able to give the appropriate exercise or the appropriate technique so that that singer can correct their vocal fault or can do the thing that they are unable to do, or so that they can get on the right track or they can fix the thing. And what this leads to is looking at voices and singers as if there is something wrong, or as if there is a problem that needs to be fixed or a problem that needs to be solved, which puts us in the position of the power over, if you will. It puts me in the position of being the expert in order to tell you what to do. So it puts me in that position in terms of teaching, rather than centering the student. It puts me in the position of fixer. And so that's, for me, that's the first issue. And that's just an overall pedagogical issue or challenge or something that I would love for us to change as voice teachers. And the one that I want to talk about today, the second issue for me, is that it means that I am assessing the effectiveness of my teaching. I am assessing whether or not I am a good teacher by how much I know about anatomy and physiology. And it also means that when I am not successful, when the singers I'm working with are not successful, or I'm not able to change something, or we're not able to fix the problem, or I come up against something that I don't know how to fix, or when I'm a brand new teacher who does not understand yet fully function, who doesn't know function, I think that the reason that I am not getting through, or that the teaching is ineffective, or that the singers are not doing what I'm hoping they're going to do, I blame that on my lack of knowledge. Now, sometimes we blame it on the student. They're lazy, or they're not working hard enough, or they're not listening, or they're unteachable, or blah, blah, blah. Sometimes we blame it on the student. But often we turn that inward and we feel very, impostery, right? We feel very impostery because obviously the reason that this student isn't progressing as well as they could, or the reason that my students don't do as well as XYZ students, or the reason that I can't fix these problems is because I don't know enough about anatomy and physiology. So we turn that interior and we out courses, mentors, books, texts, influencers, etc., 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 who tell us that here's the trick to doing XYZ thing. Here's the exercise you need to solve this problem. Here's the thing to do in order to work out this thing. The folks who are like, when you hear this, this is what's happening, and so here's the exercise to fix that. So we seek out this kind of information that, again, we begin to sort of measure our success, if you will, or whether or not we're an effective teacher, or whether someone else is an effective teacher. You know, all of these beginning teachers who are just out there teaching and they have no understanding of anatomy and physiology, and they're going to hurt singers. Singers are going to be hurt. We preference this understanding of anatomy and physiology and make it the sort of the gold, the thing that we must have in order to be an effective teacher, in order to be a good teacher. Do not get me wrong. I have no problem with understanding anatomy and physiology, understanding function, science informed, blah, 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 all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. I think that is amazing. I think it's wonderful. I think we should all seek to understand as much as we can. My issue is not with the understanding and with acquiring anatomy and physiology information or function information. My issue is not with that. My issue is with when we preference that information, make it the basis of our assessment of our teaching skills. And when we judge other people by whether or not they know what's happening in the voice. We judge other people and we say, oh, well, you don't know what's happening in the voice, and so you don't know about acoustic registration yet, so you only think about chest voice and head voice and thick folds and thin folds, and so therefore you're not a good teacher. So that kind of sinks down into our understanding of ourselves as teachers, our understanding of ourselves as effective teachers, our understanding of what pedagogy is and what it means to have pedagogical skills. All of those things, which brings me over to how to listen. Because what if you've never done an anatomy and physiology course? What if you have no functional understanding of the voice yet? What if you are brand new to teaching? Does that mean that you are necessarily a bad teacher and are going to hurt people because you didn't know this information? No, does not. Has it happened? Sure, but is that because they didn't know the information, or is it because they weren't super great at teaching yet? So some specific examples. Voice teachers come into the forums. This is the first thing we talk about. Okay, so I am working with a singer who is really nasally. What are some of your go-to exercises to raise the soft palate? A couple of issues here. One, you don't know whether this is an issue of soft palate raising or not. Nasality in the tonal outcome does not necessarily mean that the soft palate is high or low. We do not actually, unless you've got an MRI going on, you don't actually know what's happening physiologically. Nasality in the sound can be from a multitude of coordinations. So we get then a whole bunch of people, teachers responding, well, that's because this, and here's the best exercise to raise the soft palate. We get folks saying things like, I can't get the singer to project, they're not using their support. What are your best exercises and tricks for getting a singer to have more support? I'm working with a singer who always breaks between these two notes, and they can't do the transition between chest voice and head voice, or their vocal folds can't change from chest voice to head voice, or from thick folds to thin folds without cracking. What are your best exercises to get coordination from chest voice to head voice? I am working with a singer who can't release their tongue. Their tongue is stuck in the back of their mouth, and so they never have the sound that they want because their tongue is stuck in the back of their mouth. What are your best exercises? How would you go about making sure that the tongue is forward? So notice what is happening. We are all tempted. We think it's what we're supposed to do. We think it's our job to describe the tonal outcome in terms of what we think is happening functionally, or in terms of how the sound is being made. We all do this. We all default to this. I shouldn't say all. Most of the teachers who have worked with me extensively no longer do this. Most of us default to describing tonal outcomes in terms of, and especially problematic ones that we want to fix or change, in terms of what's happening functionally. That's how we were taught. That's what our teachers have said to us. That's what seems to be presented in pedagogy courses in particular. That seems to be the reason to know more about function, is so that we can tell what is wrong functionally, so that we can change them, right? So we describe all of these things in terms of what is happening functionally as our default, which leads us to try to figure out the right exercise to prescribe so that the singer fixes the problem, changes the thing, finds a different function, etc. So again, two issues for me with this. One, we rarely know as much about function as we think we do. Unless you've got an MRI on that singer, unless you can actually see which muscles are being activated in which ways, unless you've got a scope and an MRI going on, we do not know exactly what is happening physiologically. I work with voice teachers who teach pedagogy courses, who have a very deep understanding of function of the voice. There is always more to learn. It is always evolving. We always are working through the like, oh, I hear this and therefore that's what's happening. Oh wait, but it could also be this thing, but it could also be this thing. And also it's probably the interaction between these four things. We are almost always not able to fully describe the function of what is happening to create specific tonal outcomes. So that's the first issue for me. The second issue here is that when we default to that, we also then must be in a diagnose and prescribe pedagogical framework. So if the only way I know to describe a tonal outcome is through this lens of what is happening functionally, then I must teach in a diagnose and prescribe. Use that pedagogical lens to teach, which means that the less I know about anatomy and physiology, the less secure I feel as a voice teacher, the more incompetent I feel as a voice teacher, the more I question myself as a voice teacher because I don't know enough to give accurate information, and the more I slip into diagnose and prescribe pedagogy, which means that I use my expertise to tell you what to do, to tell you how to fix, to tell you how to solve the problem. So how do we reframe this? So first of all, every time I want to describe a tonal outcome in terms of what is happening physiologically or what is not happening physiologically, I resist the temptation and I describe the tonal outcome using whatever words come to mind. Simple. I describe the actual things that I am hearing, not the things I think are happening, but the actual things I am hearing. So I put up two posts that are like, listen to these various recordings of Send in the Clowns and Nessun Dorma Listen to those two, various recordings of those two pieces, and tell me how you know that this is in opera style, that this is in music theater style, that this is in opera style, that this is in Aretha Franklin style, that this is in gospel, that this is in jazz, this is pop. Tell me how you know. Not in terms of, well, there's higher pressurization. Oh, well, the shaping is blah, blah, blah. No, not in those terms. Don't want to know. Don't want to know those things. Most of us don't actually know fully anyway. Don't want to know those things. What I want to know is, what does it sound like to you? What are the actual words you would use to describe these sounds? So you might describe a sound as full or rich or dark, and it doesn't matter whether that's right or not. This is the other thing that we get tangled up with when we preference function to describe tonal outcomes. So we get tangled up in whether it's right or wrong, whether they're doing it right or they're doing it wrong. And we also get tangled up in, I have to be able to describe it perfectly. I have to be very accurate about the function in order to be a good voice teacher. What I want you to do is to start to trust your own ears in terms of describing the tonal outcome, literally whatever you hear. So you could say that opera singing sounds effortless and smooth. Or you could say, someone else might say, opera singing sounds effortful and hard. Great. Someone might say that this singer sounds like it's a little bit scratchy. And someone else might say that sounds very smooth. Both are right. Both are accurate. Both are valid. Because we're not describing the tonal outcome in terms of vocal function. We are describing the tonal outcome in how I am experiencing it. I've got a bunch of prompts that I use with the voice teachers I work with. And some of the prompts are things like, is it bright or is it dark to you? Is it a specific color? Is there an actual color? Like, is it red? Is it green? Is it yellow? Is it dark red and pink? I don't know. Does it sound forward to you? Does it sound back to you? And these are not about placement or shaping. This is literally about, does it sound forward or back? And someone's forward is another person's back. Trust me on this. If you are a long-term opera singer and have been trained in Western classical styles, you will hear something as forward or something as back that a jazz singer and someone who's been trained in jazz styles, or a pop singer and someone who's been trained in pop styles, will hear as the exact opposite. This happens all the time. And that's fine, because it's not about what is physiological, what is accurate, what is happening physiologically. Also, forward and back is a construct anyway. It's not, the sound isn't actually forward and back anyway, but whatever. That's all about shaping and our perception of shaping, but it's all fine. These are all perceptual anyway, right? That's the other thing that happens too. We talk about sounds in terms of what is objectively happening when it's really just our perception of what is happening. Yeah? Okay. Is it flowy? Is it pressed? Does it sound looser? Does it sound tighter? And I don't mean, does something in here sound looser or tighter? What does the sound sound like? What is the actual sound? You could say it feels like it's tighter, feels like it's looser. Sure, I'm not talking about, well, that's because the pharynx is constructed in this way and because the tongue is moving back, or that's because we've got a wider soft palate, or the pillars are wider. Like, we're not talking about that. We're talking about, what is your experience of the sound? Is it clear? Is it breathy? And yes, clear and breathy we can have some objective measurements-ish of some of these things, but we're not using them in that way. We're using them in, like, how do I perceive that sound? Some people perceive clear sound when I very clearly perceive breathy sound, and that is fair. You got clear, I got breathy. That's fine. Is it balanced? Does it feel wobbly? Does it feel focused? Does it feel scattered? Does it feel free, constricted, creamy, spicy, strong, weak, smooth, choppy, grounded, floaty, steady, shaky, warm, cool, connected, disconnected, rounded, narrowed, flexible, stuck, full, delicate, energized, relaxed, twangy, lofty, loud, soft? Describe the sound that you hear using whatever simple words work for you. If you have training and your temptation is to say, well, that's a chest voice sound, okay, How do you know that that's a chesty sound? What is it about this that is chesty to you? Chest voice is also not a real thing. It's not an objective thing. It is a thing that we have, chest voice and head voice, these are descriptor words that we have used to describe our perception of the sound. It's not actually a very effective or accurate descriptor of what is happening physiologically. I mean, we try to make it, and we get into trouble, we try to make it this like objective descriptor of sound. Well, when in chest voice, this is exactly what's happening. No. That is your perception of what is happening. That is your perception of the sound. So get simple with it. Get fundamental with it. Trust your ears. Ask yourself. Get curious with it. How do I know that I'm listening to a pop version of Send in the Clowns versus a jazz version versus a popera version? I mean, I know that those three are different. I can hear the differences. How do I know? What are the things that are telling me that these are different? How? It could be in terms of stylism as well. One is very smooth and connected, and one feels choppy and maybe more conversational. So you see how my hands are also describing the sound, right? So one is like this, and one is like this. One is like this, and one is like this. Describe the sound in that way. Play with that. Play with getting comfortable with releasing the need to know what is happening functionally in order to be a good or effective voice teacher. Again, understand as much as you want to and take the courses, do the things, absolutely do the things. Read the books, work with mentors, do the thing, 100% do the thing. And also see if you can reframe what I'm listening to from defaulting to how is the sound being produced, reframe to what am I listening to? Not what is happening, what am I listening to? What does it sound like? Not what does it sound like is happening. What does it sound like? What are the actual descriptors I would use to describe the sound? What happens next? When I start to describe the sound in that way, I also then start to remove the morals and the fixes and the problems and the things that need to change hopefully out of my descriptor, out of my perception of the sound. So now when I hear a nasal sound, what am I thinking? I'm thinking, okay, I'm hearing nasally. Rather than thinking, how do I correct nasality? What are the exercises I need to do? How do I get the soft palate to be high because of nasality? Rather than think that, I think nasality. What do I want to hear? Or what do I want to hear more of? I'm hearing nasality. What do I want to hear more of? Maybe the opposite for you, maybe the opposite of nasality is openness. Maybe the opposite of nasality is loftiness. Maybe the opposite of nasality is warmth. Maybe the opposite of nasality is clarity. Whatever it is, doesn't have to be right. It just has to be the thing that you are perceiving, the description of the thing you're perceiving. So I hear this nasality and I think, what do I want more of? Oh, I think I do want more openness. And then I notice two things. I notice within myself how my body responds to having more openness or to creating a sound that is more open. I can do it that way. And then I build on that. I say like, oh, this is the sensation. This is the gesture. These are the things that I am doing in response to trying to find a more open sound. So see how I'm not trying to fix the nasality, which means I don't have to have an exercise. I don't have to have a thing to do to fix the nasality or to change that technique. What I do get to have now is exploration around what's the thing that I want more of? How can we discover the way to have more of this thing? And then I get to trust myself as the teacher, right? I get to have a much better relationship with myself as the expert in the room, if you will. And I get to start to trust the singer I'm working with as well. So I start to say things like, what do you want to have more of in your singing? And where are you already doing it? So I might also be thinking that to myself. Where is there already that openness? Which vowel? Which note? Which word? Which song? Which emotion? Which pitch range? Do they already have that openness? Where they can already find that. Let's build on that. Let's figure out what that feels like to them. Let's support them to figure out where it where they are doing the thing they want to do. And then let's start to build that into the place where they have the nasality. So then they have options. So now we're not fixing the nasality. And B, we don't have to have a ton of tools and tricks and exercises to try to get the soft palate to raise, because you don't know. It's entirely possible that it's not even the soft palate being low. So what happens when I am working from, I call this find over fix. Thank you, Cindy Dewey, for that terminology. What happens when we're working from what do I want to hear more of and where is it already happening? Or how does my body respond to doing that thing? I don't have to know any exercises. I mean, you can, and you already do, but I don't have to have a diagnose. I don't have to have a prescription. So now I become student-centered, and I can trust both myself and the student. I don't have to be like, oh shoot, I don't have an exercise for that. Or, oh shoot, all of the exercises that I'm trying are not working. What were some of the other ones we talked about? Oh, the tongue is locked back. Who has exercises for the tongue to be released? So first of all, unless you have an MRI in there, you have no idea. Also, the tongue is a complex little sucker. That is a complex little set of muscles in there. I am totally behind saying things like, it's possible that we need to work on some release in the tongue here, for sure. When we talk in absolutes around, well, that's because the tongue is back, or the tongue is locked, or the back of the tongue is doing this thing, not so behind that. So you don't know whether that is actually the thing. You have a perception of it? Great. And it possibly is the thing, but the body's complex. So just changing the tongue position or making sure that the tongue is doing this one thing, not necessarily useful overall. What do we want to do? We want to start to think of, how do I know that the tongue is back? What is it in the sound that is cueing me to think that the tongue is back, or that the tongue is locked, or that the tongue is too low, or all of those things? What is the thing in the sound that is telling me? So I describe the sound not in terms of what I think is happening functionally or in terms of the problem. I describe the sound in words that literally describe the sound. So, well, it's kind of swallowy, or it's a little Kermity, or the sound is, or the vowel is, we're going to try to describe the sound not in terms of knots, right? So it's not open enough. So what is it? Okay, well, the sound is closed. Okay, it's closed, great. Or it's pinched. The sound is pinched. The sound is thin. It's pinched. It is Kermity. It's got that like cave kind of sound to it. It sounds like this. See my hands doing the description for me? It sounds like this. So what do I want then? See how this isn't a problem to be fixed. It's just an option that it's just a default right now. We want that singer to have options, not just a default. So we want that singer to be able to decide, to be able to choose for themselves. We don't want to give them what they're supposed to do next, right? I don't want to use my expertise in that way. I want to use my expertise to support that singer to discover the thing that is going to be useful for them. So what do? What do I want to hear more of in the sound? Well, if it's pinched and thin and Kermity, maybe I want it to be more clear. Maybe I want it to be more directional. Maybe I want it to be more ooh-like. Maybe I want it to be more e-like, which is brighter maybe. Or maybe I want it to be more forward. So all of those things that I'm thinking about in terms of what do I want more of in the sound, I notice two things. Where is the singer already making that sound? Guaranteed they're already making that sound somewhere and they're singing. Some vowel, some part of the range, some song, some other exercise. They're already making the sound that you want more of somewhere in their singing already. And or what does my body do in response to the thing, to making the thing that I want more of? Not what do I want to change about that, or what do I want to fix about that sound, but what do I want more of? I want more forward. What happens when I want more forward? Oh, I start to make those kinds of sounds. Maybe I start to make an ee, oh, there, that's the sound I want to go toward. I want more of that in the sound. And what happened? Well, my tongue moved forward. Everybody opened up. My breath started to coordinate toward that sound. My body already knows how to coordinate toward almost all of the sounds that we're making, right? So like my body started to coordinate toward that sound simply by asking, what do I want? What am I hearing already? Not what is happening, but what am I hearing? What does it sound like? What do I want more of? In the same terms, not in the like, what do I want to change? What needs to change physiologically? But what do I want to hear more of? How does my body respond to that? Guarantee 9 times out of 10, when I clue in and I observe what my body does in response to the thing that I want more of. So if I want more, oh, look, my tongue just came forward all by itself. I didn't need to do anything. Didn't need to tell it to do that. Why? And also all of the other things responded along with, right? I didn't need to do anything extra. I didn't need to tell the tongue to move forward. I didn't need to like go look up an exercise. Didn't need to go on the forums to ask, because that just happened because I coordinated toward the thing I want. Or I can figure out where that singer is already doing the sound that we want. They're already doing that thing. Terrific. Let's then observe what happens in that thing and then transfer or build on that thing so that now the singer knows what it feels like to do that thing and they know what it feels like to do that thing, and they can start to make choices. So more support, they need more support, they need more grounding. What does grounding mean? What in the sound tells you that they need more grounding? Grounding looks different in every singer. What in the sound tells you that they need more grounding or more support? You don't know exactly what grounding is for that singer. I don't know. Obviously, we can give some prompts. Obviously, we can, try a few things. But the challenge, I think, in our teaching is not that we should not know what's happening functionally or have a general or even very specific or complex understanding or a beginning understanding that we should have. I'm not saying that we should not know what's happening in the voice at all. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. I love functional information. I love functional anatomy. I teach it. I love it. It's great. My issue is this. Again, we default to describing the sound in terms of what we think is happening functionally versus defaulting to describing the sound, the actual sound that we hear in front of us, which then leads us on 2 different paths. Those are 2 different paths. If my default is always to the tongue is back, you're not grounded, the soft palate isn't rising enough, it's not narrow, this is blah, blah, blah. If that is my default, that I'm constantly talking about the sound in terms of what someone is doing to make the sound, I will necessarily then become a diagnose and prescribe teacher. How much more effective could the teaching be? How much more effective and deep could the learning be? How much less frustration could especially beginning teachers have if we were not teaching from a diagnose and prescribe? If we were teaching from, what am I hearing? What do I want to hear more of? Where is that already happening? And how does my body respond? If we were teaching and trusting ourselves in a more fundamental way, and if we were trusting the singers we work with in a more fundamental and explicit way. So diagnose and prescribe. So I know what's happening in the instrument and it's described the sound in terms of function only, means that I then have to come up with ways to get that function to change. I then have to have all of the exercises. I then have to have all of the information. And it becomes very tricky to resist the temptation to tell singers what to do for their own good, of course. It becomes very tricky to resist that temptation. Versus if I am listening and describing the sound in terms of what I hear, not what is happening. And I'm describing the sound in terms of what I hear, and then asking what do I want to hear more of, and then asking how does my body respond to the more of, plus where is that singer already doing the more of, doing that sound to a certain extent. It's so much easier then when we're working in that way to stay in student-centered, agency supporting, support learning then. It's so much easier to stay on that very exciting, very joyful, way less responsibility for their learning, to stay in that teaching track. No sound is good or bad. No sound needs to be fixed. There's no problem to solve. Whenever I see teachers describing problem to be solved, I'm sad. There's no problem to be solved. What is there? There's a lack of option right now. There's something that is impeding that singer from being able to use their voice in the way they want to use it. So let's figure out where they're already using the voice the way they want to use it. Let's work together. How to listen 101. Truly, this is the 101. Again, not because I think it is easy or I think this is the simple thing, but because I think this is fundamental. When I change how I listen, and again, my issue isn't with understanding how the voice works or functional understanding of the voice or absolutely not. That is not the issue. The issue is when that is the only way that we understand the voice and that we listen to the voice, and when we assess our effectiveness as teachers, or when we use whether or not we know about the voice as an assessment of how well we are teaching, or of whether we are a good teacher or not. That's my issue. The vast majority of independent voice teachers who I have come across and who I work with do not trust themselves in the studio. They don't trust themselves. They feel imposter-y because they have ingested this idea that the path to being a good teacher, the way to be an effective teacher, is to be able to properly diagnose and properly prescribe. And that involves a deep understanding of functional anatomy. And if I don't have a deep understanding of functional anatomy, I am not a good teacher. So we don't trust. We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our own responses. When we trust, when we work from what do I want to hear more of? What am I hearing? How do I describe the sound? What do I want to hear more of? How does my body respond to that, to creating that sound? And also, where are they already doing that sound? When we teach from that point of view, and then we get functional anatomy and we start to have more anatomy and physiology understanding, and the functional anatomy feels very validating because we go, oh, that's why I do that. Oh, that's why that works. Oh, that's why that's happening in that way. Ooh, that's why I call it that. That's why my body wants to do that when we do this thing. Oh, that's why that works so much better in the lower range, and why we need to build from the lower range to the top range in order to find that thing in the top range. Oh, that's why that's always a little tricky part in there. Huh. It becomes really super validating when we start to get that information, because all of the science, if you will, validates the things that we have already been doing. Oh, that's why I love tongue trills so much. Oh, that's why we do humming. Oh, yeah. SOVT exercise is a very fancy word for this helps me to find balance and smoothness. This way of using my voice gives me a really nice smooth transition when I use tongue trills. Oh, that's why? Huh, cool. Very validating. When we can't trust ourselves, when we are in the mindset of I must be able to diagnose in order to be an effective voice teacher, the more I learn about anatomy and physiology, the more imposter-y I get. The more I think, shoot, I do not know enough to be a good teacher. The more judgy I get of the teachers who haven't done anatomy and physiology as well, right? The more judgy I get. Yes. As I said at the beginning, the other challenge for me is that when we do learn anatomy and physiology and we have this as our sort of like premier thing that we must know in order to be effective voice teachers, we tend to talk about the voice in objective ways, right? So we tend to talk about the voice as this is what's happening, and we tend to like impose that on the singers we're working with. Quick example, and then I gotta stop. In Western classical styles, you're singing along, you make a lofty sound that is nicely balanced in terms of what is necessary for Western classical singing, and your voice teacher says, yes, your soft palate was high, and the column was nice and thin, or consistent. Right? That's what your voice teacher says to you. So rather than me coming up with an understanding of what it feels like, how my body coordinates to make specific tonal outcomes, I now have had anatomy and physiology, objective anatomy and physiology, imposed on my experience. Is my soft palate high? No one knows unless I'm in an MRI. Is it high? Perhaps. No one knows. Do I have a narrowed pharynx? Perhaps. You don't know. But what happens is I then start to say, oh, that is objectively what's happening, which gets us into lots of trouble. And we have all had anatomy and physiology imposed on our experience of the sound as objective fact, rather than it's possible that what's happening there is that you've got a raised soft palate. How does that feel for you? Or it's possible that you've got an openness. What does it actually feel like to you? Does it feel like you've got space up here? Terrific. Maybe it's because you've got a raised soft palate. Maybe not. But let's say, is that what that feels like to you? Is that the way you want to describe it? Terrific. Maybe someday we'll put you in an MRI and we'll see whether that is actually what's happening. Who knows? So we get these ideas that this is objectively what is happening. This is absolutely what's happening in my body. And we impose that on our students as well. How about we both experiment with finding the thing we want more of, and you describe what that feels like. And then we'll say it's possible that that's because the tongue is releasing in a specific way. We don't put the objective on it. What may be a fun exercise for you in the studio in the next little while is to, every time you catch yourself describing a sound in terms of what's wrong or what is or is not happening physiologically. Oh, that's because you're not supporting enough. I need you to support more. Oh, that's because your tongue should be farther out. That's because the tongue should be released. Oh, that's because you don't have enough air. That's because blah, blah, blah. Every time you hear yourself describing the tonal outcome in terms of function, give yourself a 3-second inhalation and see if you can describe the tonal outcome in terms of literally what you're hearing. Then ask yourself, what do I want to hear more of? Or ask the singer you're working with, what do you want to have more of? No, not what do you want to change, just what do you want to have more of? How does my body respond? And you can ask the singer, where are you already doing that thing? See what happens. Say, this is one of those concepts that many of us understand intellectually, and many of us have an understanding of in terms of pedagogy. And part of the reason the voice ped degree is so long, it's like 9 months long, is because it isn't until about month 4 or 5, when people start going, oh, that's what that looks like in teaching, right? It takes a solid 4 or 5 months to start to recognize those patterns, even though you might have this in your mind like from day one, to start to recognize those patterns, to start to recognize where and when I am describing sounds in terms of what is happening versus in terms of the actual sound, and where and when I am trying to fix a sound or solve a problem or diagnose versus asking what I want more of. Find over fix. It's a beautiful principle. Okay. Let me know if any of this, here we go, resonate. And if you're interested in, working out more of this, feel free to get in touch. If the voice ped degree is not the thing for you, I also offer a 10-week VIP experience where we work pretty specifically toward applying some of these principles in your teaching and doing some shifting around our defaults and how to notice when I'm about to miss an opportunity to teach in the way that I want to teach. So yeah, that's also a thing. Have a great weekend. Happy teaching.